What if there were evil robots running amok during the French Revolution? What if the only thing that could stop them and give the people a chance to rise up was a robot dancer? That is the premise for the game that I'm going to be talking about in this video. My name is Andrew, and welcome back to another video in my series I'm calling Filling the Hole Left by Souls, where I talk about various Souls-like games and whether or not they're worth your time. The game I'm talking about today is Steelrising. So what is Steelrising? Steelrising is an action role-playing game developed by Spiders, the studio behind Greedfall and The Technomancer, and published by Nacon. It is set in an alternate version of the French Revolution in 18th century Paris, where King Louis XVI has created an army of clockwork automatons called Automats to rule with a literal iron fist through fear. You play as Aegis, an Automat bodyguard of Marie Antoinette, on a quest to find her surviving children and uncover the truth behind the king's actions. So first I want to talk about the things I like about this game. Right out of the gate, there is a pause button and an assist mode. I personally did not play on the assist mode because it does come at the cost of earning certain achievements. However, I like that that option is there for people who are new to Souls-likes or people who maybe just want to experience the world and the story stuff and they aren't really interested in the difficulty. I personally don't think that this is on the harder end of Souls games that I've played, so if you're familiar with the genre, you shouldn't need any of the assist settings, but I do like that it's there. However, as a parent of two small children, I love the pause button. Being able to pause the game and suspend it on my Xbox and then come back and pick it right back up is really great for where I am in my life right now. So two features in this game, one that I appreciate and one that I use a lot. The next thing I really like about Steelrising is the setting. Like I mentioned already, it's set in like an alternate French Revolution with evil robots, and that right there is just a cool premise. Even though the game is obviously made by a lesser known, less AAA studio, I do think that they nailed the tone. I think that when you're exploring these levels, especially early on, there's a sense of tension, there's a sense of curiosity about what's happening, what's going on in this world, and I think that the tone and the vibe were really well done. Speaking of the levels, I think that the level design in this game is really well done. It's a lot of shortcuts and minimal resting places, so a lot of the level design relies on shortcuts that will take you back to those resting points or back to the beginning of the level. And that's another thing about the game, is there is only one entrance and exit into the level. So you spawn there when you go into the level, you explore a bunch, and then to leave you have to get back to that exit. There are a lot of side quests that have you revisiting levels over and over, and so these shortcuts really help when you're trying to get back into a certain location and then come back to the exit. There is an item you can use to teleport to the exit, but it is a one-time use type item, and once you run out of them, you have to use the item that will burn your currency if you want to get back to the exit. So having all these shortcuts and smart level design really goes a long way. Another thing that goes a long way into exploring these levels is there's some pretty cool Metroidvania elements to this game. As you play through it, as you progress, you unlock some traversal abilities like a grappling hook that will let you shoot up to grappling points, and so then you can run along certain platforms and rooftops and things, and then you unlock an ability to essentially go through locked doors. It's dressed up in this game as like certain doors or breakable walls will have like a little symbol on them, and you can kick it down once you have this special ability. That allows you as the player to revisit these levels without them feeling stale, because you're constantly gaining access to places that you couldn't go before. Another thing that helps with that is a compass mechanic. So it's an item that you have to use, so it's something you can completely ignore if you don't want it, but it is there for you, where when you press the button on your compass, your objectives will pop up as icons on the screen. There's no glowing path, there's no mini map or anything like that to help you, but it does give you a direction to go if you're feeling lost or if you're just trying to get to the objective of a side quest real quick and then get back out. I really like the compass in this game. I think it was very well done. Another thing that I think Steelrising does pretty well is there's a ton of side characters and quests related to them that you do in this game, far more than most Souls games, and maybe not more than most Souls games, but they're obvious. There's a quest log, there's icons on your map of where to go to complete these quests. You're talking to these NPCs in a central hub, progressing their story in a very understandable way, something that a lot of Souls games, they try to be very obtuse with their character quests. In Steelrising, they have a story that they want to tell you, and they do a good job of telling it through these side characters. The last thing I want to talk about in the positives is the combat. It's good, and there's a decent amount of build variety that will make replays more enjoyable if you decide to do that. It's not overly complicated just in general, but there are a few cool mechanics. So one of them is you have these alchemic chemicals or alchemic capsules that you collect throughout the level, which allow you to use certain elemental abilities on your weapons. And elemental abilities are a pretty big deal in Steelrising. Enemies use them against you, and you can use them on the enemies to debuff them in some way. The other interesting mechanic is that when your stamina runs out, you enter a phase of overheating, essentially, because you are a robot, where your stamina meter will rapidly decrease and you have to press a button, and whenever you press that button you take a little bit of like frost damage. So if you do this too much, you'll freeze up, but also wherever you press that button is how much stamina you earn back right at that point. So it's kind of like that Gears of War reward for like reloading, doing the perfect reload. You can do like a perfect stamina recapture after you've expended it all. So it's just an interesting idea and kind of a cool layer to combat, because beyond that, really it's either dodging or blocking and hitting when you have opportunities. It's pretty straightforward, but it's not bad. It feels pretty good to play. I liked it. Now I want to talk about some things that I didn't really like about Steelrising. The first thing is enemy variety is pretty lacking. The back half of the game, you're essentially just fighting maybe bigger versions of what you fought before, or versions that are holding a different kind of weapon. But once you have played through like half the game, you've seen all the enemies. And I think a few more types of enemies could go a long way. But it's not the end of the world. It's just definitely something I noticed as I was getting towards the end of the game, and something that I would like to see improved upon if they were to ever make another Souls-like type game again. Another thing is that this game is pretty easy to look at, pretty good looking in the environments and the robot designs, but the people all look pretty rough and pretty janky. And they also all look very similar with the exception of a few characters. Most of them are white dudes with like white wigs. By the end of the game, I did have a pretty good grasp on who was who, what their motivations were and all that, but it took me a little while to kind of figure out which character was which and keep track of all of them. It's not really a bad thing, it's just, you know, a little bit better character designs probably could have helped with that. Hand in hand with that is that this is a spiders game, like I mentioned, and if you've played Greedfall or Technomancer or any of their other games, you kind of know what that means. There's just jank. So your character feels a little slippery and floaty. Not too bad. I think the movement and stuff does feel pretty good, which is very important for a Souls-like. There's just some glitches and some weird things that happen now and then, and some cutscenes where characters aren't talking like they're supposed to, or the camera's looking at their stomach, or, you know, just weird janky things like that. Nothing that broke the game or nothing that impeded my progress, so it's not that big of a deal, but it is just those things that like kind of take you out of the experience and make you go, oh yeah, it's not quite there. And the last thing is really, it's both a positive and a negative, but something worth mentioning is that all of the bosses in this game are pretty easy. I don't think I died to a single boss. Granted, I jumped into this game again after playing Shadow of the Erdtree, so the difference in difficulty was astronomical, and it was actually kind of refreshing to go back to a more simple video game with simple boss patterns. That being said, if you're looking for a major challenge or looking to push yourself in the boss fights, like, this probably isn't it. But if you're looking for a little bit more laid-back Souls experience, I think that this could be viewed as a positive. So now, who would I recommend Steelrising to? I would recommend Steelrising to anyone like me that has an itch for Souls-likes that can never be fully scratched. You're always looking for the next one. You're always excited to hear a new one's been announced. I know that there has been some fatigue in the industry and community lately, but for me, I'm always excited to try out a new Souls game. I would also recommend it to people who like Spider's other games. If you've played Spider's other games, you know that they're a very creative studio with some really interesting ideas that just haven't really been able to nail it out of, like, knock it out of the park as far as like polish and quality to the point where they really break through to the mainstream. But they do some cool things and their games are worth checking out, and if they click with you, I don't think this one would be any different. I would also recommend this game to people who like the setting of Lies of P, which recently came out. That was very Pinocchio. Well, that was literally Pinocchio, but it was a similar like robot apocalypse type thing. This game, nowhere near as polished as Lies of P, but a similar tone and a similar vibe. And I think that if you really are looking for that particular setting, this is a good option. So with all that being said, what is my verdict? I would give Steelrising a B. There's really only a couple of things holding it back from a higher grade. I love the creativity in the world design and the abilities that allow you to explore more of the levels as you unlock them. I also like all of the story content and side missions the game has to offer. I had a lot of fun playing through that stuff. If the rough edges were a bit more polished and there was a little more enemy variety, this game would be even better. As it is, I still recommend it though. I think Spiders is so close to making a game that breaks out into the mainstream and puts their name on the map, and I think they deserve it because they do have a lot of interesting ideas and cool concepts in their video games. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to this channel so you can see more like it in the future. If you want to hear my thoughts on other Souls-like games such as Lies of P and Mortal Shell, I've done videos on those as well. And if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts on the FromSoft games or a variety of other video games, check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts and here on YouTube. Well, that's it for this one. Stay friendly, gamers.